After the country's president declared martial law, violent clashes breaking out between protesters and troops, helicopters flying over Parliament. After the president's surprise TV announcement declaring martial law, accusing his political foes of sympathizing with North Korea. But hours later, the president backing down. Our live report just ahead. Also tonight, another massive pileup involving cars and semis as lake-effect snow pounds the Great Lakes and Northeast. A train slamming a semi-truck in the slush, and the new snow threat after several feet have already fallen. President-elect Trump agreeing to allow the FBI to begin background checks on his staff picks. Also the growing skepticism among Republicans over whether Mr. Trump's pick for defense secretary will be confirmed. And our new reporting, the concerns among his former Fox News colleagues about his alleged alcohol use. New details about that stowaway who boarded a flight from JFK to Paris. How she was allegedly able to sneak past critical parts of security at one of the country's busiest airports. Our underwater journey with the endangered otters guarding the so-called redwoods of the sea. And the one-of-a-kind pharmacy that dispenses prescriptions for the soul.
This is NBC Nightly News with Lester Holt.
Good evening and welcome. U.S. officials tonight watching with great concern as a serious crisis rapidly engulfs one of America's most loyal and strategically important allies. Tonight, South Korea on edge. Its National Assembly surrounded by protesters where there were clashes with security forces. After the country's president declared martial law and mobilized the military, citing the threat of anti-state forces and threats from neighboring North Korea. Opposition lawmakers moving quickly to lift martial law, but not before the government announced a ban of all political activities and declared media and publications would be subject to government control. The crisis catching the U.S. with 30,000 troops stationed there off guard. NBC's Beijing-based correspondent Janice Mackey-Frayer joins us now. Janice, the president's move really came as a surprise.
That's right, Lester. After an extraordinary night, President Yoon is now facing calls for his impeachment, while the White House just said it's relieved he's reversed course after declaring martial law. Tonight, dramatic scenes of chaos in South Korea, one of America's key allies. Protesters scuffled with police outside the National Assembly building, some windows shattered, and helicopters flying overhead. After President Yoon Suk-yeol declared martial law, aimed at stopping what he called North Korean anti-state forces in the government. Only hours later being forced to revoke it when opposition lawmakers held an emergency vote to defy the president and scrap martial law, some of them scaling fences to get back inside for it. Outside the parliament, protesters pushing against armored vehicles, while inside, furniture piled high to keep soldiers out. The U.S. announced they had no warning of Yoon's plan in a country where nearly 30,000 American troops are stationed.
We are watching the recent developments in the ROK with grave concern. We are seeking to engage with our Republic of Korea counterparts at every level.
In an interview with Lester last year, President Yoon warned the North Korean threat was growing.
Do you think that the U.S. is paying enough attention to deterring a North Korean attack on the South?
하고 있습니다. 제가 미국과
Yes, definitely. Since my inauguration, we're continuing our consultations with the United States.
Yoon's future now uncertain. Janice Mackey-Frayer, NBC News.
Here at home, millions are still feeling the effects of that lake-effect snowstorm, especially on snow-covered roads. Now, another storm is in the forecast. Erin McLaughlin is in Erie, Pennsylvania for us.
Tonight, a whiteout in Erie, Pennsylvania, and dangerous driving conditions. I-90 was shut down when low visibility caused 4 trucks to slide off the road, according to county officials. There were no reported injuries. Not far away, there was a close call yesterday. New video captures the harrowing moment a trailer truck became stuck in the slush over train tracks.
He's not going to stop. Oh, man.
A freight train, unable to stop, plows into the side of the truck.
Holy hell.
Police say thankfully the driver jumped out prior to impact and is fine. Tonight from New York to Pennsylvania, there's been so much snow, roofs are collapsing under the weight of it. In Erie this morning,
It was a loud bam. It scared my sister.
the owners of Sparkle Clean Car Care tell NBC News they were supposed to be at work right around the time this happened. Cadence Denning lives across the street. You have a lot of snow on your roof.
Yeah.
Are you worried?
Yeah, I am. It started to get us worried.
Since last Friday, the region has been measuring snowfall in feet, not inches. The plow drivers of Pennsylvania say they've had enough. When you see snow like this, what goes through your mind?
More work. We might have to be out all night. There's snow coming down like this.
Tonight, up and down the East Coast, millions are feeling the freeze with temps 10 to 20 degrees below average. Here in the Northeast, they're bracing for a clipper storm set to strike on Thursday. Meanwhile, as you can see, Lester, the snow's still coming down.
Okay, Aaron, thank you. Tonight, there are new warning signs that Pete Hegseth's path to nomination as defense secretary may be in jeopardy with Senate.
I want to back up just a minute.
To strike on
If you'll take notice, it don't look to me like that water in behind her is frozen, because usually if it's ice, the glare will be different. So what it's doing, it's catching everybody in surprise, especially the Great Lakes. And whenever those systems build over those lakes, it just basically turns into a snow machine. They had this problem 2 or 3 times now. And of course, whenever you see the snowfall, like up in the Rocky Mountains, Sierra Mountains, whatever, they're not just getting an average 8 to 10 to 12 inches of snow now. They're getting more like 28 inches, 36 inches, sometimes even 5 foot of snow. So we're seeing the moisture increase as much in and during the wintertime as we are during the summertime. But the thing that's catching them off guard is that usually we'll have, especially up north, by probably Halloween, usually by Halloween up north, you've already got the Grand Lakes already frozen. Well, that ain't doing that now. You know, our summers have been extended about 2 months in the fall and about 2 months in the spring. We don't no longer get the spring like we used to, or as long of a spring as we used to. It basically just goes directly into summer. And then in the winter, we'll go from a summer type setting to boom, bam, all of a sudden it'll turn instantly cold. And whenever it does, it doesn't give the lakes time to freeze. And because the lakes ain't froze over, the system can get over it and basically start drawing moisture from it. And the next thing you know, they get big snows now. 4 or 5, maybe 6 foot of snow. And most people's houses, roofs, and stuff like that can't handle stuff like that. Depending upon what kind of roof it is and how old the house is and how it was built, etc. This is all part of global intensifying warming that we continue to keep telling people about, and they keep wanting to stuff their ears full.
on Thursday. Meanwhile, as you can see, Lester, the snow's still coming down.
Okay, Aaron, thank you.
It looks like back over to her right side, her right shoulder, which would be our left side or far left side. It looks like the water has began to freeze right there because it does have a different imagery about it towards it not being near as clear.
Thank you. Tonight, there are new warning signs that Pete Hegseth's path to nomination as defense secretary may be in jeopardy with Senate Republicans. It comes as we have new reporting involving allegations about his drinking from former colleagues at Fox News. Claims the Trump transition team is strongly denying.
Let's go home.
Last several days, as the gravity of this very important responsibility set in, I've concluded that I must respectfully withdraw from consideration.
And Garrett, the Trump team has also now reached an agreement with the Justice Department for an FBI background check of nominees.
Yeah, that's right, Lester. It's called a Memorandum of Understanding, and some Republican senators have been urging the Trump transition to sign, worried that not getting these checks done in a timely fashion could delay confirmations or lead to unwelcome surprises just before hearings get started. Lester?
Garrett Haig, thank you. Also tonight, we're learning more about that stowaway and how she was able to get through airport security in New York and board a flight to Paris without a ticket. Stephanie Goss reports.
Tonight, new details about the woman who allegedly snuck on board a Delta flight to Paris from New York's JFK airport over the holiday. Passenger Jairam Duku shot this video that he says shows her being questioned when the flight landed.
She ended up pulling out this pass and gave it to the flight attendant, and it was just not a boarding pass.
French border police say she did not have valid travel documents and was detained. A source familiar with the matter says Saturday night she was put on a return flight to JFK. Gary Treichler was on that plane with his family.
Something triggered her to start being uncooperative.
He says she appeared to be Russian and middle-aged.
She was then escorted off the plane.
Days before, the woman managed to elude TSA ID checks and gate agents. A source with knowledge of the situation tells NBC News she first used a lane reserved for flight crews and then skirted the standard ID check. But she went through a body scanner and voluntarily removed 2 bottles of water that officers discovered in her bags, eventually sneaking on to the Paris flight where she was ultimately discovered.
I'm just waiting for the police to come on board. They may be here now.
The TSA says she was not carrying any prohibited items and did not pose a security threat. Jerry Phelan is a former TSA director. How surprised are you that she was able to actually end up on that plane without being stopped?
Yeah, I'm very shocked. We didn't catch her even boarding on the aircraft itself. And how that happened, it's beyond my comprehension, frankly.
And Stephanie, this story has us all thinking about the numerous checkpoints to get on an international flight. What is Delta Airlines saying about this?
Well, the airline won't comment on the gate check, but it is doing an exhaustive investigation. Meanwhile, multiple authorities, Lester, are looking at footage trying to determine what happened that day.
Okay, Stephanie, thank you. Let's turn to what officials are describing as a sweeping hacking operation connected to China and impacting nearly all the major U.S. phone companies Americans use. Hallie Jackson explains.
New details tonight on what's being called one of the worst cyber hacks in history, with federal officials revealing they've been investigating China for months after hackers compromised the networks of multiple U.S. communications companies and may still be lurking in the systems of at least some of them. FBI and federal cybersecurity officials say these Chinese government-affiliated hackers managed to steal records, intercept some voice calls, even penetrate the wiretap system used by the Justice Department to investigate people suspected of crimes or spying. Officials say most of the private communication intercepted by the hackers involved people affiliated with the government or politics, but the access to companies like Verizon and AT&T means the communications of nearly every American are vulnerable. And now a new warning to be careful what you communicate and you.
Everybody is vulnerable. Did you hear that? Let's back it up real quick.
Communication.
Back it up, back it up, back it up, back it up, back it up. Right there.
Tap system used by the Justice Department to investigate people suspected of crimes or spying. Officials say most of the private communication intercepted by the hackers involved people affiliated with the government or politics, but the access to companies like Verizon and AT&T means the communications of nearly every American are vulnerable. And now companies like Verizon and AT&T means the communications of nearly every American are vulnerable. And now
isn't that something?
Verizon and AT&T means the communications of nearly every American are vulnerable.
How can that be? How can some of the most top-notch geeks in the world that's supposed to design these things to where they can't be hacked by putting up firewalls and etc., how can that be? How can our own government let us down by not protecting us from ongoing potential harm in other countries or whoever coming in and swiping our identity and taking stuff from us and spying in on us this way. How can that be? I don't know. Gross negligence? Is that what you call it? I don't know. They've created something that they can't control.
A new warning to be careful what you communicate and use encrypted communication when you can. Think Signal, WhatsApp, or iMessage. Those blue text bubbles a sign what you're saying is protected. Is a warning like that overkill, in your view?
I think it's a good standard hygiene practice for operating in today's modern technology environment. You have to be really mindful, again, about the technology you're using, how it's secured.
The culprits, officials say, a group called Salt Typhoon, the same collective allegedly behind the hacks of the Trump and Harris campaigns before the election. Officials even now still trying to understand the scale, scope, and timeline of this hack.
We have to understand that the digital connectivity that we all rely on, that we benefit from economically, can also be used against us.
For its part, China has denied past hacking accusations and last month accused the U.S. of trying to spread disinformation, despite what U.S. officials see as a clear connection. Lester?
Hallie Jackson, thanks. In 60 seconds, guarding against the Grinches who steal holiday packages, a problem that's only getting worse. How to protect deliveries after they land at your door, coming up. Holiday weekend. A warning tonight about a growing problem. Thieves stealing those gifts after they're delivered to your doorstep. Christine Romans now on how to protect your packages.
Porch pirates stealing your deliveries right at your front door. Last year, 120.5 million packages swiped, estimates the security firm Safewise.
How many?
5 million packages swiped. Right at your front door. Last year, 120.5 million packages swiped, estimates the
Good
security firm
God.
Safewise. Professor Ben Stickles studies this growing crime.
The volume of things that we're having delivered and the value of those things has just skyrocketed, and with that comes more theft.
Often, retailers will simply replace or refund a stolen item, but they don't have to. And at what point is the consumer responsible for that package?
So who's responsible for package theft really changes a lot. In most states, once a package is delivered by a carrier on your property, it's considered yours.
This holiday...
Good grief. Man. You know, there's a lot of people that receive critical medical medicines and all kind of medical equipment that comes through the mail. What do you do about somebody like that winds up costing somebody to die because they didn't have the proper equipment or they didn't have the proper whatever to help them through whatever was going through? Good grief. $120 million or 120.5 million in a year just in America? So you can only imagine what's going on in all these other countries.
Scramble to stay ahead. Amazon Prime members can have their packages delivered into their garage or a locker. UPS using AI to reroute at-risk shipments to a UPS store. And doorbell cameras, never more popular. But those cameras don't always stop thieves, and according to one survey, 25% of people who had a package stolen received no refund. Now, new types of insurance will cover stolen packages, like Porch Pals. For $120 a year, it covers up to 3 claims, $2,000 total. Its founder, James Moore.
Just order away, and then let's deliver to your porch. Don't worry about it being stolen. Don't worry about any of that. If it gets stolen, we just replace the value of that package.
And experts say to keep packages safe, track your delivery, require a signature, or pick up from the store, rather than pile up the boxes on the porch. Christine Romans, NBC News, New York.
Up next, they're cute, they're furry, and they're helping save the ocean. Our voyage into the depths of the Pacific with the Sea Otters to save the force of the sea.
The homeowners should make it mandatory whenever they build a new house now. They they should build a special compartment on the side of a house. That way, if it is a package, especially a big package, let's say 3 foot by 3 foot, I figure that's probably about as big as a package that anybody's going to get. If it's any bigger than that, odds are they're going to have to go to the UPS or FedEx or post office to be able to get the thing. But the homeowner should make it mandatory to start putting these boxes
Todd Faulkner from
in these newer houses.
And I'm inviting you, our viewers, to join me for an 11-day tour of Ireland, June 9th through the 19th.
Your Irish adventure begins in the heart of Dublin. Bask in the breathtaking views from St. Patrick's Cathedral. Witness the work of craftsmen at the world-renowned...
Now that guy was from the news, and I don't know. Let's see what this guy here is going to say.
In our series Climate Challenge.
On a morning like this, it is hard to remember that there is an ecological disaster that's happening off the coast of California. In order to show you how bad it's gotten, we're going to take you underneath, down here, to show you how good it's supposed to be. But before we could get in the water, just over there, family of sea otters, we were surrounded by visitors. This area is teeming with life. Once the coast was clear, we geared up and descended into one of the most protected natural kelp forests on the West Coast. Dr. Josh Smith has been studying this fragile ecosystem for years. The kelp can grow up to 100 feet tall. And suddenly, we were making new friends. But here, the real stars of the ecosystem are the elusive sea otters. A recent study by the Monterey Bay Aquarium reviewing historical records found that those otters have been a cornerstone to protecting the environment. And in the Central Coast, they've been working overtime to try to protect the kelp forests from an invasion of purple sea urchins brought on by warming waters and a die-off of sea stars.
Sea otters are really important predators in the ecosystem.
They're like the game wardens of the forest.
Yeah, they do tend to keep sea urchin populations under control.
But those sea urchin feasting otters are in danger. We went under in a different spot to see just how much damage those purple urchins were causing. It looks like we're in a desert, and you've got these purple polka dots all across the seafloor here. That's right. The reef is covered with purple sea urchins. They're these baseball-sized tiny animals that like to eat kelp. But there's no kelp here. They hate it all. The crisis reaching a boiling point 10 years ago when a major marine heat wave ravaged the kelp. And they completely transformed the reef surface here to what we call a sea urchin barren. It's kind of depressing to see the barren like that. How much of the kelp here in California has been lost?
Right here in Monterey Bay, we've lost about 70% or so of kelp forests.
At Monterey Bay Aquarium, hi otters! They've been researching ways to tackle the problem for years, even taking us along on sea otter rehabilitation missions. All right! For now, preserved behind glass and protected in the bay, as biologists continue to search for solutions in the sea. Gotti Schwartz, NBC News, Monterey, California.
What an amazing journey that was. Up next, making people feel better with a prescription for poetry. For some, it's just the right remedy. Good news is next.
Poetry.
Everyone's getting that new Simply Sick.
Let's go here and see what's going to happen here.
Go online, call, or simply scan this.
Sold for less than $42.
Very friendly.
Workers, more trade, more prosperity.
Looks like
Granulation is.
That a college degree is a prerequisite to success.
Our fellows have conducted research that has helped pass gun safety measures in 21 states, including red and purple states, which is keeping guns out of the hands of potentially violent people. For example, in Minnesota,
our fellows are tackling domestic violence against black women and girls, who make up just 7% of that state's population, but sadly 40% of domestic violence victims. In coordination with state legislators and activists, they helped create the nation's first ever office dedicated to tackling this crisis. I'd like to ask all the fellows in this room who are working hard to make a difference across America to please stand up, and let's give them a big round of applause. Come on, stand up. Thank you. To help put the state of American health in context, the Bloomberg American Health Initiative is releasing a study today that compares life expectancy in the U.S. to the U.K. In the UK, people live about 2.7 years longer, and men live 3.5 years longer than they do in the United States. Researchers found that these gaps can be explained by 4 preventable causes: cardiovascular disease, drug overdoses, motor vehicle crashes, and guns, the very issues our work focuses on. And we know we have a long ways to go. Despite having the world's largest economy and most advanced healthcare facilities, America still ranks 40th in the world in life expectancy. Think about that.
Wow. We're doing something wrong, ain't we?
.com.
Yep, we're doing something wrong if we're in the 40th range.
Now is that the president of South Korea felt as though he was backed into a corner, facing myriad scandals, many scandals here domestically, with a popularity, a favorability rating under, I repeat, under 20%. And in his words, a parliament, a couple of yards behind me, that wasn't able to play a part in furthering his domestic agenda. So a huge miscalculation on his part to take control, to take power, take control of the situation in, everybody would agree here, a terrible way, Anderson.
No, fascinating. Michael Larry, appreciate it. Joining us, stay with us also, Mike CNN's national security analyst and former deputy director of national intelligence, Beth Sander, joins us. Also, William Cohen, who served as defense secretary during the Clinton administration. Secretary Cohen, I'm just trying to put this in a global perspective for us. How dangerous is political instability in South Korea at a time when North Korea is testing new missiles with longer range, and obviously China getting increasingly more aggressive against Taiwan?
Well, it's pretty serious, Anderson. As you pointed out, just the threat of the North Koreans over the years, but especially in recent times when they're firing off more and more missiles and getting greater and greater range of those missiles, with the possibility of striking the United States with a nuclear weapon. So that's dangerous enough. But it poses a danger to the entire region. Japan is certainly going to be concerned about this, as other countries in the region. So instability is not good, and I think this reflects an act of impulsiveness. I think he acted impulsively, and you're supposed to have a plan. If you have plan A to impose martial law, what's plan B? There's no plan B, and that's why it's President Biden was not called on it. His own parliament wasn't called to let them know what was going to take place. His own party didn't know about it, so it had to be an act on his part coming late at night, impulsively, not thinking it through, and he's paying a consequence for it now.
Yeah, Beth, I mean, to that point, the announcement clearly appears to have caught the Biden administration, the intelligence community by surprise. If this was just an impromptu decision, it's a pretty crazy impromptu decision to make if you haven't really planned out the institution of martial law in a country that, has not had martial law in decades.
Exactly.
Yeah. Note to self: don't text after 11 p.m.
Yeah, I mean, it's like a late night decision. Of all the bad late night decisions people have made, this seems like a huge one.
It seems like a huge one, and it absolutely will be. There is no way in the world that he is going to get out of this politically alive. His chief of staff resigned, all senior staff has resigned, his party has demanded his resignation. So now it's just a matter of how long does this take? And then we're going to see this period of 60 days from when he declares, because I don't think we're going to have to go through the impeachment process. So he's going to resign, and then there'll be elections within 60 days of that. And so that's going to put us at, elections in South Korea, one of our most important allies, what has been an absolute bulwark for us
I didn't realize that we had 30,000 troops over there. That's impressive. That's very, very impressive. I didn't know what was going on. I just started putting out some information to the public pertaining to what was happening. And I still say that we don't know all the details of why he done what he done. Something must have sure enough rattled him pretty hard for him to do something like that, because that's a big deal. That's a big deal. I don't know if he overreacted. I don't know what was prompted all that. They say that because of North Korea probably got spies and the way I understand it, sympathizers. There's South Korean sympathizers with North Korea. And because it is so many of them, that's what supposedly prompted this emergency declaration. I don't know.
Working with Japan.
I don't know if that's so or not. I don't know.
Working with Japan in his trilateral arrangement on that peninsula and in the region. And that, we don't know how that's going to turn out. The reason that Yoon was so important to us is because he was a willing player in that, and the next person may or may not be. So there's a lot at stake.
Yeah. Mike, I mean, the entire South Korean parliament voted unanimously to undo this martial law declaration. What are the consequences for South Korea's president?
Well, he's lost so many of his allies, and there is a fear. I think it's fair to say, Anderson, just talking to all of these people, South Korea is so proud of how far the country has come since 1980, since the last time there was martial law spread throughout the country. We now have K-pop, K-cinema, soft power is so strong that South Korea exerts. And I can tell you there are people from grandmothers and students, everyone in between who's gathered here. They're really afraid and concerned that this is a blemish on South Korea's reputation. The world now knows that things are incredibly unstable here. And there are allies of President Yoon Suk-yeol who are concerned, and people in the opposing party who are concerned that North Korea perhaps could see this moment as a moment of weakness and do something that, we don't even want to go into that realm of possibility. But so there is serious concern about what this has done to the reputation of South Korea. And
based around the analogy that forever action is a reaction, I agree. This could prompt more instability even that much further. I knew things was pretty topsy-turvy over there, but I didn't realize that it was this topsy-turvy. I just imagine that probably floored most of our Central Intelligence agencies all over the world that all of a sudden picked up on that. Because it was just out of the blue. Nobody was warned ahead of time. There wasn't really no pre-planned. You go from plan A to plan B to plan B to plan C. You're supposed to have all your ducks in a row. Something had to have happened to have initiated this. I don't know what it was. I don't know if it was dramatized by the receiver that received the information. As far as an overkill, I don't know. But something prompted this. And it's not good because it's based around Bible scriptures that says that in the last days there will be wars, rumors of wars, there will be commotions, there will be incidences that will occur on this level. And of course, with us living in a high-tech global society today, within minutes, if not seconds, if something happens in another country or even this one, it goes global. It goes cyber. So we're living in very, very crucial, unstable times right now.
Going forward.
Secretary Cohen, obviously there are tens of thousands of U.S. troops stationed in South Korea. I know a spokesman for the Pentagon has said that, quote, and I'm quoting, right now there's been essentially no impact on U.S. forces. What impact do you think continued instability there could have on U.S. forces in the region, or to the, as you know, we talked about this kind of trilateral alliance?
Yeah. I assume the Korean forces will be enhancing their security alert and go under a higher level of status of warning. I think the American troops will remain calm but very vigilant, watching as things unfold. So I think we'll keep an eye on North Korea. We'll keep an eye on what is taking place in the region. But I want to add just one comment of optimism here. This is democracy that worked. The Korean people have said, we like freedom, we like democracy, we don't want anyone to take that away from us. And so what the president tried to do is, imposing martial law, become a dictator as such, because he was frustrated that he couldn't get his budget through, he couldn't get his cabinet approved or not impeached. So democracy in that sense worked, where the people spoke out and said, no, you'll work with the system. Democracy can be messy, but dictatorships are a menace. And that's the choice they have made here. So I think it sends a signal to all of our allies in the region that, yeah, we have a problem here for the time being. I think it will be corrected. In the meantime, we'll be on alert, and I think the region will be relatively safe. If the North Koreans start to do something and move in an adversarial way, we'll be ready for that. So I think it will calm down over time. And as Beth has said, 60 days will pass, they'll have a new election, and democracy will be in action again.
Beth, what do you think about North Korea? I mean, Kim Jong-un often employs hostile rhetoric, obviously against South Korea and the U.S. Do you think they will try to do something using this as an opportunity?
I do. I think that they see, Korea watchers have been worried, for some months that that Kim would take advantage of the U.S. transition and to do something, actually kinetic, actually an attack on something like an island or something like that around the transition, to put a real dilemma on Trump's plate at the beginning of his administration. Now, I think that there actually is even more likelihood that that will happen, but I'm not sure it will happen before the South Korean elections, because in a way, the North Koreans aren't dumb. If they do something before the election, it actually could encourage South Korean voters to gravitate more to the Conservative Party rather than to the progressives, who are more accommodating to the North Koreans. But so we're looking at a window, I think, early in the Trump administration, where we really have to be on our toes and
on guard,
alert, because Kim is definitely gunning to make things difficult.
Yeah. Beth Sander,
he's a loose cannon. Kim Jong-un is a loose cannon, been a loose cannon now for years, and the guy's just itching to start the Holocaust, or he appears to be. I don't know. A lot of them people over there, they don't. Their whole mental mind mentality ain't the same as ours, and to those people, dying is considered a great honor. And if you die for a strong purpose pertaining to your country, they actually idolize you. You're looked up to as a martyr. In that sense, we see that all the time over there. Their whole mental mentality is completely different than how we think over here. And maybe it's because so many people over here in America has been on Easy Street, and they've never had to really pursue patriotism pertaining to our freedoms like our ancestors did, and like other people do in some other countries. It's a very crucial balance pertaining to democracy, and I agree. Their system worked today because they looked at the situation and said, hey, he must be doing this for biased purposes or whatever, and that's whenever they called his hand on it. And that's the way that a true democracy is supposed to work. It's supposed to work that way, including ours. that puts aside a dictator or a ruler in a sense towards basically bringing harshness upon to his own people. It's still a very critical situation. Either way you look, whenever you get a bunch of people like that all upset all at once, you got nut jobs that's going to come out of the woodwork, and they'll be dealing with this probably for the next year.
Beth Sander,
In some form or fashion, it'll be on a lower level. It may not hit primetime news, but you'll have all kinds of nut jobs that'll come out of the woodwork towards wanting to show their you know what.
William Cohen, thanks so much. Coming up next, an update on a woman who allegedly stowed away on a Delta Airlines flight to Paris out of New York. How she got on this is...
I not heard that. This will probably pretty well do us in on this particular program.
T.org.
Tonight on this recording. I'm just
Something
glad,
strange is happening.
I'm just glad they settled it. I'm glad they settled it.
That those who were there in an undercover capacity on January 6th, how many were there?
Again, I'm not sure that I can give you that number.
And again, well, let's watch part of this. We'll record part of this, if you don't mind. This will probably be interesting pertaining to some of the hearings that they're having still to this day over January the 6th. Let's listen.
I'm not sure that I can give you that number as I sit here.
Isn't that remarkable? Why were FBI agents in the crowd that day? We're actually going to address that in a couple days here on Finnerty. But why isn't the public allowed to read the affidavit that allegedly justified the FBI raid on Mar-a-Lago? Before Chris Wray, it was James Comey, a name I'm sure you're familiar with. In 2016, Comey decided it was a good time to get political and hold a press conference where he described Hillary Clinton as legally innocent but morally guilty. Democrats hated him for it, and it might have cost Hillary the election.
Although we did not find clear evidence that Secretary Clinton or her colleagues intended to violate laws governing the handling of classified information, there is evidence that they were extremely careless in their handling of very sensitive, highly classified information.
Less than a year later, Donald Trump fired Jim Comey as FBI director, and whatever Trump dislikes, liberals love. So Comey was ultimately allowed back into their good graces, but he also supported the fake Russian conspiracy theory about the Trump P-tapes in a Moscow hotel.
I honestly never thought these words would come out of my mouth, but I don't know whether the current president of the United States was with prostitutes peeing on each other in Moscow in 2013. It's possible, but I don't know.
Yeah, it's possible, says Comey, but he's just not sure. But damage is done. Since its founding, the FBI has always pretended to be apolitical, but for decades, that is exactly what the FBI has been doing, mocking the rule of law, subverting our democracy from within, and working hand in glove with the Democratic Party almost every single time. And it all started with the FBI's founder, J. Edgar Hoover, the first FBI director and one of the most corrupt men in American history. He kept secret files on almost every prominent politician in Washington. He served for 48 years as director of the FBI under 8 presidents. And you might be asking, wow, how did Hoover keep this job for that long, 48 years? Well, you make sure that you've got enough dirt on important people in Washington to make them afraid of you and afraid to fire you. And that's what he did.
Wow.
Like making sure that JFK knew that Hoover had dirt.
I think they call that blackmail.
On his many extramarital affairs. He had recordings in some cases. It would be a shame if that information went public. It would be a shame if Jackie found out. He did the same thing when LBJ took over. Even Nixon. Nixon's first act as president-elect was to announce that Hoover would stay on as director. Under Hoover, the FBI used illegal wiretaps and monitored people like Martin Luther King Jr., John Lennon, Malcolm X, Muhammad Ali, many others, and these were used for blackmail. It was only after Hoover's death that the extent of his corruption became known publicly, and in response, Congress took action immediately and limited the director of the FBI to a single 10-year term, and only Robert Mueller has made it a full 10 years. It's very uncommon. And since Hoover, trust in the FBI has fallen every single decade. Take a listen.
Look, trust in the FBI is eroding left and right. Feels like we're in the moment that we need a real church committee, that this is a moment like when the J. Edgar Hoover FBI clearly was no longer helping the American people, there was a moment. This feels like we might be in one of those moments.
Frankly, I'm surprised the FBI has made it this long. It was an experiment in the beginning. And in the beginning, Americans respected the FBI, trusted the FBI. Kids used to dress up as G-men for Halloween. But those days are over. Today, the FBI creates more problems than it solves. Here's a question. What really happened in Butler, Pennsylvania on July the 13th, this past summer, when Donald Trump was almost killed? Why don't the American people know? And round we go until someone stops the madness. And that person might be Kash Patel. Next on Finity, political chaos in South Korea, a prime example of just how far a weak leader will go to destroy his opposition. That's next. Stay with us.
Information.
Well, it sounds to me like they've already got it figured out in what actually occurred. Sounds to me like people's already making judgment on what has happened over there towards somebody acting upon biased decisions of biased remarks towards basically putting everybody in jeopardy on account of it. It's what they just said. I don't know if it's true or not. I don't know. You only know what you hear, and you don't know that in which what you hear, if it's true, if you're hearing all the truth or only parts of the truth. I mean, as the old saying goes, there's always two sides to the story. I'm going to end it right here. Good luck to all of us. God bless America. God bless our troops. And, I really was concerned about that ordeal that happened with South Korea today. I'm glad that it settled down, or I'm hoping that it settled down. Heaven help us all, and shalom.